As I said, my own name is Ray Ryan from Revenues Customs Brexit. That's good. I'm from Revenue's Brexit team, and I'm just going to go very briefly, I suppose, through the customs aspect. Today's focus is, as Hazel said, around the SPS and the requirements around that at import. But I'm just going to cover off some of the, I suppose, the requirements from a customs and revenue point of view. And obviously the customs declarations, they have the commodity codes linked to the SPS products, and that's where the requests and the requirements and the controls come in from through the customs declarations and links back into HSE and DAFM's requirements then. So just in terms of the, I suppose, the legal basis, first off, since the 1st of January, all goods moving between GB and Ireland require customs declarations, and the Union Customs Code, I suppose, is the key piece of legislation for that. And then the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement is another key aspect to be aware of. So again, it's just ensuring that if you are importing, you're aware of the legal basis for the import declarations, for any authorizations that you may have, and even the requirements in the TCA around origin and the proofs required, etc. So it is an important aspect that if you are importing goods, that you are aware of the requirements from a customs point of view, and then obviously the authorizations that back those up and the legislation that underpins it all. So just in terms of import declarations then, there's two declarations really required in advance of departure from GB. So an import declaration is submitted to Revenue's AIS system, that's the automated import system, and then a safety and security declaration is also required to Revenue's import control system. So it's two declarations required for goods movement, and obviously if there's multiple loads or multiple goods on board for different importers, then you would need multiple declarations linked to those. So every good needs an import declaration, so it's important to be aware of that. Again, considerations around payment of duties and VAT, I'll touch on that again, but it's just an awareness around customs duties may apply. You can avail of origin if it's under the TCA, which reduces the customs duties aspect of it. There is postponed VAT available. I will touch on those in a minute, but it's just to be aware that if you are importing goods, it's linked back to customs, payment of duties, payment of VAT at import, and it's awareness around that they may need to be paid in your account in advance of importing the goods to allow the goods to move quicker through the ports. Just in terms of importing, again, as today's focus is, transiting goods, so goods coming from the EU through the UK into Ireland are as such, they're an import in terms of they're being moved into the country from GB, but it's covered under a transit declaration. So again, it's a separate process from the import declarations direct from GB. So if you're moving goods from the EU, the transit will be raised in the EU. The UK will be considered, GB will consider the office of transit, and then it moves into Ireland as the destination office. So these declarations are submitted to NCTS. It does require access to financial guarantee. In most cases, the haulers or the logistics provider would have access to it, but sometimes in some cases it will be the end customer in Ireland would, or sorry, the customer, the supplier in the EU would actually have the financial guarantee in terms of importing. Again, it's just a reminder that it does require a safety and security declaration into Revenue's import control system. So it is those declarations. It's a very brief overview of the requirements. There's lots of information up on revenue.ie/Brexit in relation to it, but I'm sure many of you on today are well aware of the requirements. But if you're unsure, there is information on revenue.ie. And again, all these declarations are subject to interventions and or license requirements, which we touched on by the HSE and DAFM later. So just in terms of the Ro-Ro service itself then, Revenue introduced the 1st of January last year, the Customs Ro-Ro service for the goods that are moving on the ferry services between GB and Ireland. It's important, I suppose, to note that the majority of goods obviously are coming on these services, and many people that are using it will be aware of the Customs Ro-Ro service, but it's important to make use of it correctly to ensure all those declarations I mentioned in the previous slide, they all have a reference number, a master reference number, an MRN, and they should all be included on the pre-boarding notification. And again, this is key to it, that if you are missing declarations, it can cause delays, ensuring that you know how to use the service. There's also options to add mobile numbers onto the PBNs when they're created, so that you can have the truck driver getting messages directly to his phone, advising him of the channels, and that's a key aspect of the pre-boarding notification and the key use of it. So it avoids the need to actually log into revenue.ie/Ro-Ro and check the status. You can actually get a push message from Revenue indicating what channel you have. In the majority of cases, the channel is actually exit the port, which means that when you land in Dublin or in Rosslare, that you're actually clear to move from the port and go to your end destination as such. It's around mid-80s, 85%. So again, it is good. People are aware of it, are using it correctly. There is aspects that I'm going to cover in the next slide just in relation to how you can improve that again, improve that rate. So just in terms of the call to customs, the red channel as such, the call to customs channel, which I suppose most businesses don't want to see, most hauliers don't want to see, but there is requirements for certain checks, in particular around documentary checks and physical checks in relation to HSE and DAFM checks, and obviously some revenue checks as well and other agencies. But the list on this screen actually is just covering some of the ones that are actually avoidable. So we have some examples here in terms of missing declarations, documents required, and insufficient funds. So in terms of missing declarations, I mentioned already, on that Ro-Ro service, you need to include all the declarations that are on board the vehicle when it's on the Ro-Ro service. So if you are missing it, sometimes even cases where it's declared empty, it's causing issues. It's meaning you're being called to customs unnecessarily. You may have all the declarations done, but because they haven't been on the pre-boarding notification, it's raising a call to customs, whereas they could have actually been received to revenue and checked and processed, and they could have received an exit report on arrival. And again, that would reduce the need to call to customs and again reduce the delays that you may be experiencing on that. Other aspects then are documents that are required. So you can have invoices, bills of lading, packaging lists, and other documents that are required to be linked to the customs declaration. These can be submitted to the system at the same time as the declaration. And again, this allows revenue time to actually process those documentary checks while the ferry is en route to Ireland, and it can actually be upgraded from a call to customs to an exit port while you're en route. And again, it speeds up the process. So if the documents are available to revenue at the time that the goods are departing the UK, it can actually speed up the process and aid you actually getting through the ports. The other aspect I mentioned earlier in the presentation was in relation to the awareness around customs duties and VAT at import, and the fact that these need to be paid to allow the declaration to be processed and cleared to get that exit port. So what we are finding is that there is insufficient funds being held in TAN accounts. The TAN account is actually the revenue cash account as such that you can top it up with funds. So whoever's the payer on the declaration should have that account with the relevant funds for the declaration prior to sailing. So at least the declaration can process with the relevant customs duties or VAT on it. And again, this would reduce the number of pre-boarding notifications getting a call to customs. So it's just important to be aware of those aspects in terms of some examples that call to customs can be avoidable and can actually, if you have the relevant declarations included, the relevant documents included, and the relevant funds, it can reduce down the time that you do get a call to customs message from revenue from the Ro-Ro system. Just some very quickly, some key learnings since the 1st of January. Again, from dealing with numerous presentations and webinars, the key part of the whole lot is ensuring that each party in the supply chain knows their role and how it impacts on others. Do they need to share data? Do they need to share information? Even example in terms of the MRNs that are created, are they sharing them with the person that's creating the PBN? Have they given them all the details they need to complete that PBN in full? The payer, are they aware of what customs duty is going to be on it? Is the payer different to the importer? That type of thing. As the declarant aware that these goods are coming through on a particular date? Have they topped up their account? So it's really important that each party within the supply chain knows their role and how it can impact others. And again, ensuring that that call to customs, where possible, the declarations, the documents, and any funds are available and ready to go for the declaration moving on arrival. And share that, the next point is similar to that, just sharing those declaration details with the hauliers or freight forwarders, ensuring that they have as much information as possible so they are aware of what status the declaration is at. Can they go collect the goods if it's unaccompanied? And just ensuring that there is a flow of information there that may not have been there previously prior to the 1st of January 2021, that now you need to be in a lot more contact and direct contact with those within the supply chain, your logistics or hauliers or freight forwarders. And again, the drivers themselves have that mobile number being added to PBN. It just makes it easier for them to be aware of what channel they're getting. They'll get that push message before they actually go down to disembark the ferry, and they'll be aware if it's an exit port or if they do have to call to customs. And again, it's just a reminder that the ports are in operation 24/7. Customs staff, HSE and revenue and DAFM staff are available 24/7. That means goods are flowing 24/7 and there's documentation being checked on a 24/7 basis. So do you have the relevant documentation available on that 24/7 basis to get it to the agencies when required? Just in the final point then, it's an awareness of the customs procedures, authorizations and reliefs. I touched on it earlier in terms of the legislation that underpins customs. There is certain authorizations and reliefs that can aid you meeting your customs requirements. There's more information on the revenue.ie website, revenue.ie/Brexit. You can get more information there, or even contact Brexit queries at revenue.ie if you're unsure. And just in terms of, I suppose, one of the authorizations is that you can clear goods inland to a temporary storage facility if you have a particular authorization. But it is a reminder, as we're talking about the SBS goods here today, that if you are carrying SBS goods, they must be checked at the point of importation, that they cannot be moved inland. So it's just be aware of the goods or movement and the impact that can have on authorizations from a customs point of view. So there are customs authorizations to allow you move inland, but it doesn't mean that you can, it overrides the SPS requirements for checking at the point of importation at the ports or airports. So that's a very quick overview in terms of the customs requirements. There's some useful context there, and I'm happy to take any questions either now or at the end of the session. Thank you.